Hearts Full of Midnight, Chapter 2. Something is wrong with my husband, Denton. There has to be. That'd been only a few days ago, when she'd first come to hire me. I was fresh back from a pair of catastrophes, one upstate, the other in Arizona, and I needed the work. Otherwise, I would have taken a week off. My face was a mess of cuts and bruises. The goose egg I'd received from being slammed headfirst into a wall at least had gone down, but my arm was still in a sling. The shoulder dislocated 3 days before, courtesy of my efforts to stop gunmen from turning my client into a sieve. I was run ragged and tired. She looked tired too, at the end of her rope with something I took to mean gambling, booze, or women. You can say a phrase 20 different ways without a struggle, using subtle differences in tone and inflection. A change of emphasis changes the meaning. I should have been paying attention to how she'd said it that first day, but my head had been elsewhere. It was still on the Mort Peters case and what had gone down at Herbie's Diner. And, if for some reason that slipped my mind, there was the Eisen brothers fiasco, the one that had gotten me the shoulder, to give me fits when I thought of how close we'd come to botching that as well. Suffice to say, I was distracted, and so I listened to the words and took my retainer, flying on autopilot, same as I would on any other case when a spouse comes in wanting me to play spy for a few days and see if there was a reason for the doubts they were feeling. In Sally Burgess's case, it should have been a happy ending. Earlier today, I'd given her my report in person. "There's nothing," I'd said. "Your husband, Denton Burgess, is about as clean and regular a guy as they come. He goes to work, does his job, and he's home in the afternoon. Doesn't even stop in for a beer with the boys. Foreman says he works hard, yet he doesn't do much to draw attention. He clocks out for lunch, is always back with a few minutes to spare, and then he's back to the grindstone for the rest of his day. No tickets, no hidden bank accounts, no booze, no dope, no mistresses as far as I can tell. He attends church on Sundays, has done jury duty twice in the past 3 years. He votes a straight ticket in every election. No jacket with the police. No youthful indiscretions to be ashamed of. As far as I can tell, he didn't even steal an apple off the bin outside the corner store to share with his pals. Payroll has him sending a fin to his mother in Lodi every 2 weeks. Every other penny of it goes into the joint account the two of you share. There's simply nothing there that I can see, Mrs. Burgess." She'd taken the news like I'd offered her a lunch of cold poison. "There's something wrong with him. There has to be." "Nothing that I can see," I'd said again, but decided to play devil's advocate. "He ever threaten you?" "No." "Get violent? Strike you?" "No, of course not." "You get the feeling like he's lying to you?" "No." "Then congratulations are in order. Your husband isn't stepping out on you, and there's nothing in his behavior that says something untoward. You're lucky, Mrs. Burgess. I don't get to say that too often to ladies who sit where you are." But she hadn't looked lucky, nor like she'd wanted my congratulations. She'd looked like a woman deep at the bottom of a well dug out by despair. That was when the nagging feeling had started, and it hadn't gotten any better as the day wore on. Marisol had the afternoon off, something to do with her children, she'd said. I was alone in the office with nothing to do but let the feeling chew on me, long after my client had paid her bill and left. Finally, when I couldn't take it any longer, I'd driven over to the Burgesses' rented one-bedroom above the flower shop where Sally would occasionally fill in. The factory where Denton worked hummed 24 hours a day. He'd recently pulled a stint on the mid-shift and wouldn't be home until after 10 sometime. I'd arrived at 9:50, creeping up the steps and entering the home without knocking, almost sure of what I'd find and not liking it much when I did. "Where does Denton keep this?" I asked, meaning the piece. "We can't have him knowing about it. You know we can't." "Why not?" she asked. "Because you don't give a guy a shock like that when he gets home from work." "He needs to know." was all she said. Why? She made a face to say the answer was obvious. Because I shouldn't be the only one who does. Chapter 3. You're not. I know. But of course that wasn't enough, and I knew it the moment the words left my mouth. Better that I'd said nothing at all. Denton's a swell guy. Knowing you were playing around with something that's supposed to keep you safe would only worry him. You don't want that, do you? I could feel her eyes close and heard the sigh build from 6 feet deep in her chest. Sock drawer, bedroom, she said. Make sure you cover it up with the unmentionables and that you keep it all neat. Denton notices things like that. He was in the Navy. In the bedroom, I replaced the pistol and arranged the scene like a military man would expect it. The differences in the Army and Navy were wide and clear, and any man who'd served in either branch would be happy to tell you all about it if you made the mistake of bringing it up. But stowing your drawers? There weren't too many different ways to do that, and so I could be reasonably sure he would never notice. How'd you know it was me and not Denton when I arrived? I asked as I slid the drawer closed. How do you know I could tell the difference? Because I came in without knocking and you didn't immediately give me the business. There was another deep sigh, partly of frustration with me, and partly because of something else. But to her credit, she answered. Denton has a peculiar way of taking the stairs. He says it's something to do with the rolling deck on a ship. Whatever it is, I've heard it what feels like 1,000,000 times now. I could pick his walk out of 1,000,000. When I heard you coming up, I knew it wasn't him from the moment your feet first hit the baseboard. Sally was sitting when I returned. She'd switched from red wine to gin and was gripping her glass with a pair of shaky hands and taking big swallows. She offered me one in a voice tinier than the hiccup of an apartment in which she lived, but I declined. I was never here, as far as I was concerned. The trip to the bedroom was only a few steps there, a few steps back again. The apartment wasn't any bigger than mine, but with 2 people living in it, it must have felt tiny and cramped. Days where you were home and with nothing to do, you'd get right on top of each other all day, nowhere to go. A brief part of me wondered if that had been why she'd come to me. But the smarter part of me knew it wasn't, straight off. It was something else. Something far more bizarre to the conventional mind. So? I asked with some added force behind my words. She was looking dull in the eyes, and I figured she needed an ounce or 2 of the rough to shake her out of it. The trick worked perfectly, and her face cleared up considerably between another gulp of the gin and when her eyes turned upwards toward me, like she was just noticing I was there. You know how it is, she replied. I know how it is most of the time, sure, but not here. Give it to me straight. What's got you so convinced there's something queer about your husband? She shook her head. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Sure I am. That's what you're going to say, isn't it? I already did, earlier today. You don't need to hear it again. Maybe I did. Maybe I still do. We could have gone round and round on it. She had her defenses up now in spite of the booze. She was playing it stupid, or coy, anything to keep me from getting answers. I needed to figure what buttons to push. But just then, a shoed foot hit the bottom of the stairs in a way that made her jump. And just like that, our little game became a moot point. It was Denton, home a little earlier than I'd expected. He's coming, she whispered. Yeah, but it was slow going. I understood then what she meant by his peculiar walk. The man I'd followed didn't betray any of the like, but it was clear some injury affected his ability to climb a flight of stairs. It wasn't just the step of an ex-Navy man then. I put a finger across my lips and nodded towards the coat closet just to the side of the kitchen doorway. She gave the nod, and I slipped inside, closing it behind me. Everything hanging within gave a sway at my intrusion.